Welcome to CAD Corner. In this video, I'll be explaining how to draw a 2D isometric drawing in Autocad. 2D isometric drawing is a flat representation of a 3D isometric projection. That is, it is used to provide a faster way of creating an isometric view of a simple design. Distance measured along an isometric axis are correct to scale, but because you are drawing in 2D, you cannot expect it to extract other 3D distance, the areas, the display objects from other viewpoints, or remove hidden lines automatically. Yes, so to have our isometric drawing now, we are going to have to change this interface using the Isodraft command. The Isodraft command is used to enable the isometric drafting settings. That is, from the Isodraft, I can turn on the isometric snap, or I can turn it off. So from the drafting settings, click on DS, that is the D setting, that is the drafting settings. And then from the snap type, turn on your isometric snap and OK. Now I have this green and red line crossing each other. Now from this place, this is where I can just easily turn the Isodrafting on and turn it off here. So now I have the isoplane left, isoplane top, the isoplane right. Now for the isoplane left, this plane helps to align snap and grid along 90 and 150-degree axis. So this is working for just 90 and 150-degree axis. For the isoplane top rather, this plane helps to align snap and grid along the 30 degrees and 150 degrees axis. So this one is working for the 30 degrees and 150 degrees axis. So the isoplane right helps to align snap and grid along the 30 and 90 degree axis. So this is working for the 30 degrees and 90 degree axis. So by choosing one of these three isoplanes now, we'll be able to align the crosshair, cursor, precision drawing and tracking tools along the corresponding isometric axis. So now this is an example of an isometric drawing. This is a pictorial view of an isometric object. This is the front view looking through arrow F, and this is the plan, which is the top view. This is the plan, and this is the left side view. The left side view. So now to complete this operation, we are going to be needing this draw and modify tools: the line, the ellipse, the trim, the extend, and the copy. So now for the ellipse now, which is the isocircle, this is the circle. This is not just an ordinary circle. When drawing on isometric plane, we use ellipse to represent the circles. The easiest way to draw an ellipse with the correct shape is to use the isometric option, which is the isocircle option from the ellipse command. So when we get there, we're going to show how it is done. Now the first thing to do now is to use the line, and then we have to get familiar with our dimensions. So from the draw toolbar, I'm going to use the line first. And then make sure you turn on your auto mode. Now from here I can change it to isoplane left, or isoplane right from this place. So my line again, and then dimension of the dimension of 10. Enter. So the isoplane is going to allow it to go in the direction of the drawing. So this is 70. Now I can decide to go up now or just to continue the other way around. So I'm going to come back to this to change it to the isoplane right. Then I'm going to input my dimension, which is the distance of 150. 150, 10 again, and then 150 again, following the dimension. I can decide to go up, but no, I don't have any line up, so I'm going to come back to change it again to isoplane left, which is 70. Now can come back to this place again to isoplane right, a distance of 80. So 80, then go up again with a distance of 60. 60, and then 70. 70. Now I'm going to change again to isoplane left. Okay, the isoplane top to input my distance of 20, and then 70 again, because that is the top view of my drawing. That is why it is called the iso top. Then change again, 60. Now need to pay attention to the dimensions as I said earlier, because from here to here is 70, and then we have from here to here to be 10. So definitely from this point to this point is going to be 60. So I'm going to input the dimension of 60, then change again to, now I can end the first operation here. Nearest. Now I have the skeletal shape of my isometric drawing. Now next thing to do now is to use the line again to connect the openings. The line again. Yeah. So I'm going to use the line to continue the operation. So from here, I'm going to change to isoplane, right or left, okay, right, to the nearest. Make sure your line is in contact with the other line. Then I'm going to use the line again to connect these 2 points together. Make sure they are in contact with each other. The line again. Now I have the skeletal shape of my isometric drawing. The next thing to do now is to input the circles, which is the isocircles, using the ellipse. So for this now, I'm going to use the ellipse for the isocircle. And recall that I said the ellipse is used to represent the circle in isometric drawing. So I'm going to go to the draw tool bar to get my ellipse. And now a practical sample. First thing says specify center of ellipse, and specify center of ellipse. This is the center of my ellipse. But because I'm dealing with the isometric drawing, what I need to do is to click on ellipse. Here I have my ellipse. Can use the command ELL. The ellipse, but this is not what I want because we are dealing with the isometric drawing. So the ellipse again. Now it says specify axis point of ellipse. At this point now, because we need the isocircle, click on I, letter I on your keyboard, letter I, then enter. Now you can then specify center of isocircle. Now that I means you are representing the ellipse to be in form of isocircle, that is for the isometric drawing. Now I can specify center of isocircle, and I'm going to have this. Now let's change the view. Now I can change to isotop. This is isotop. Now again I can change to iso left. So this is iso left. So now this again we are going to do the same thing for this circle and this semicircles. So the first thing we need to do now here is to determine the center of this box or the square. Now this is where the copy selection comes in. So this from here, this is half of 60, which is 30. I'm going to highlight, right click, then copy selection, the distance of, specify a base point first, the distance of 30, enter. Then I'll do the same thing for the other side. Copy selection again. Now I can change the isoplane to 30. Now, now I have the center of my square or the box. Now back to the isocircle. Now the first thing, like I said earlier, is to use the ellipse. I can use the command ELL ellipse. Specify axis endpoint. The axis endpoint, just click on I for isocircle, I, then enter. Now you can specify center of isocircle. Specify center of isocircle to the center of the isocircle. Now here we have the diameter of 30, that is the radius of 15. So I can enter 15 to get the diameter of 30. Then I can remove the unwanted lines. Now I have my isocircle for the first one, the box. Now for this, so from here to the center of the circle is half of 70, that is 35. So we're going to use the copy selection again, highlight, right click to copy selection. Or you can as well use the command, just click, type copy selection, specify the endpoint to iso left, then enter your distance of 35, enter. Then from here to the first center of the circle 22, the next one 22, making this 44. So this, we need to copy selection again, come here to change 22, then the next one 22 plus 22, that is 44. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification button. Now with the number on the screen, you can reach out to us via WhatsApp to ask questions or to bring any problem you are unable to solve regarding AutoCAD. So back to the drawing, I have my distance of 22 and 22. Now I have my center, the first circle and the second circle. Now again, using the ellipse to get our isocircle, click on ellipse. You can use the ellipse from the draw toolbar or from the command ellipse. And specify axis endpoints. Note, you must click on I on your keyboard, I, then enter. And we can specify center of isocircle. This is the center of your isocircle. Now you see, I'm going to come back here to change it to isotop. So this is the isotop with diameter of 22. Diameter of 22, that means radius of 11. So I'm going to have radius of 11, that is 11 for the first circle. Now here I can decide to use the copy selection again to take circle to the other side. That right click again to get the copy selection, locate the midpoint, then transfer to the second midpoint. We have successfully copied the first isocircle to the other isocircle. Now I can again repeat the isocircle using the ellipse to the second midpoint. Now click on ellipse again. I enter, then this is the ellipse with the radius of 11. Now I have my two circles. Now next thing for me to do is to use the line to connect these circles together. Make sure you zoom in to be sure you are picking the exact point. Then the line again. Now that's the tangent. Now I have the line now. Back to the draw and modify tool needed. Now I'm going to use a trim to remove the unwanted lines. So highlight and back to the modify toolbar. This is the trim. Then remove, remove. Enter. Can use the erase to remove the unwanted lines. Erase. Now I've been able to replicate from this to this using the isometric drawing, the isodraft, the isocircle, and the modify and draw tools. So now the next thing to do now is to input my dimension. Note, for the isometric drawing now, this is the dimension tab. This is the align, this is the linear align arc length. Now we are only going to be using the align for the isometric drawing dimensions. So the align from here, the next point is 70. Now repeat the dimension again. Make sure you are using the align. This is 60. We have 60 here. The align again. Now I have 20 here. Using the align dimension for the isometric drawing. This is the first point. This is 10. The the align dimension again. From this point to the next point, 80. Now the align dimension. So we are using only the align dimension for the isometric drawing. This is 10. Now I can just decide to right click to repeat align. Repeat align again. $70. To the center of my circle. Now I have 30.7. No, it won't work that way. Now let's try linear. See if linear is going to work. This is linear, which is 30 years. So from here to the center of my circle, this is the center of my circle, is 30. Align again because we are not done with the dimensions. $22. Now I have the dimensions of all the lines. Now the dimension of the isocircles. Now the dimension of the isocircles. So because it is an isocircle and in AutoCAD sees the isocircle as an ellipse or a regular. So a dimension diameter or dimension radius tool won't work directly. So what I'm going to use now is to use the manual text. That is, I'm going to use the dim align. That is the dimension align, and then I'm going to pick the first and second quadrant in opposite direction. So this is the first quadrant. This is the first quadrant in opposite direction. Don't forget. Then the second quadrant in opposite direction. I'm going to bring it out. See, I'm having 21.223, but that's not what I need. So because there's an ellipse and AutoCAD cannot recognize as a true circle, so manual annotation is what I'm going to be using. I'm using manual annotation now. So yeah, I'm just going to erase this and then input my dimensions, that is diameter of 30. So that is the dimension of my isocircle, diameter of 30. I use the dimension align with the manual annotation to get this. So now we already have the diameter of our isocircle, which is 22, and the other one which is 22. Now I've come to the end of this video. Note, this is an isometric drawing. This is a pictorial view that has been replicated here using the line, the ellipse, which is under the isocircle, the trim, extend, and the copy selection, the modify and draw tool in AutoCAD. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on your notification button. You can reach out to us for questions and other problems regarding the isometric drawing on AutoCAD via WhatsApp.